Netflix has almost 300 million subscribers worldwide. And last night's Tyson vs. Paul was the most widely distributed boxing event in the history of time. It was also an absolute disaster. Last night's Mike Tyson vs. Jake Paul event could have been the most watched sporting event in history. When you have access to 300 million homes around the globe and you have the biggest name in boxing history, that's a recipe for success. The problem is Netflix failed to meet those expectations. They can't control everything. They can't control how the fighters fight. They can't control the outcomes of the fights, but what they can control is distributing that fight to you in the comfort of your own home. And that is where they failed. The fights themselves were spectacular outside of the main event. The featured fight of the evening had knockdowns on both sides and was an absolute war. The co-main event was an absolute back and forth war, a controversial decision which keeps people talking. We had cuts, we had wobbles, and it was a great fight. The hype was finally building to the main event. And yes, the boxing pacing is an absolute disaster. When you're waiting 1 hour between fights, it sucks the air right out of the room. But the momentum was still building. We started to get more excited. We saw Mike Tyson's bare ass in the locker room, and nothing gets you more ready for an awesome main event like the bare ass of a 60-year-old. Here we were, ready for the Mike Tyson vs. Jake Paul fight. But you couldn't really watch it, could you? The stream was buffering. It was cutting out. You were getting black screens of death. And on one hand, that means this was a wildly successful event and Netflix couldn't handle the volume. On the other hand, that means that all of these new fans, all of these old school people that know Mike Tyson's name but don't really keep up with combat sports, had a terrible experience and will likely never come back. Check any Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, check anywhere. Everybody was talking about this fight. It is quite literally the most watched boxing event in the last 20 years. The problem is people had a horrific experience. Netflix had the audacity to talk about the 2 NFL games they're gonna get on Christmas. You can't even deliver a boxing match with a 60-year-old. And we're gonna trust you with America's #1 sport. And that's the problem, because Netflix's entire future is hinged on the fact that they can deliver live events. Content is too expensive. They can't keep spending $100 million on movies with The Rock. They need to produce live events and live content, because then you can force ads down people's throat and they can't fast forward. This just set them back tremendously. And of course, they're gonna fix this problem. If they know how to do anything, it's deliver streaming content. They completely underestimated what this was going to be. What's funny though is this isn't the first time that Jake Paul broke the internet. Jake Paul has had several fights on several different streaming platforms where the streams could not keep up. When he fought on Showtime, that stream went down constantly to the point where they refunded your pay-per-view money. When he fought on Triller, same exact experience. And now he just broke Netflix. So as cringy as he is, as much as he refuses to accept that his hair is heading in the wrong direction, this guy sells tickets, this guy moves the needle. The problem is Netflix couldn't move with him and they couldn't deliver the product. It was an absolute failure. But you know what? When the main event came around, at least for me, the stream was steady, and I almost wish it cut out. That fight sucked. Now let's talk about the actual boxing experience. The visuals were fantastic. I don't know what was real in the arena versus what we saw at home. There was LED screens on the turnbuckles, the corners of the ring. The floor was lit up, and that experience was great. The graphics were phenomenal. They had a drone flying around the arena with superimposed graphics on top of it, and that looked unbelievable. That experience from home was spectacular, but the fight itself sucked. Jake Paul was fighting a 60-year-old man. And the game plan was clearly weather an early storm, take over late. There is no way that this AARP card-having senior citizen can keep up. And he was right. Mike Tyson had a little success early because he came forward, he let his hands go, and then very quickly slowed down. He had the legs of a newborn giraffe, was very wobbly. And fine, Jake Paul not being able to knock out Mike Tyson, that is what it is. Mike Tyson's one of the best boxers to ever do it. He is clearly still in phenomenal shape. He's got a head like this, a neck like this, and I can understand not being able to knock him out. That is acceptable. What's not acceptable is the fact that these were only 2-minute rounds, and there were only 8 of them. And Jake Paul was gassed by round 3, not letting his hands go. One of the most low volume performances I've ever seen. Jake Paul is in his 20s. The fact that he couldn't just pump a jab and stay busy and continue moving and just light up Mike Tyson is insane. I understand early he was afraid of the power, standing across from the scariest man that has ever lived. But what was your excuse in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8? The lack of volume, the lack of conditioning is absolutely embarrassing. And this did bad things for Jake Paul. Because now we're at a point where the only way people are gonna watch Jake Paul fight is if he fights huge names, and we are running out of giant names of old people that he could actually beat. Jake Paul's not gonna be able to build a career on his own name against people we don't know if he doesn't improve his actual boxing skills. We all watched him fight Mike Tyson. We watched him fight Anderson Silva, Ben Askren. We watched him fight names like Tyron Woodley. We did not watch his last fight, an unknown boxer. And that is going to be his problem. He's not very fun to watch. He's not gonna have the success that he needs to build his own name, and he's gonna have to continue looking for these freak show fights. I will watch them, but hopefully my stream won't buffer.